She looked at my thrift store dress and laughed, telling the security guard to take out the trash. She didn't want her rich friends to know her mother-in-law was poor, but she forgot one thing. I'm not poor. I'm the CEO who just bought her company, and tomorrow morning, the trash is taking over. Honey, let me tell you something about dignity. You can buy a $5,000 dress, but you cannot buy class. That is a lesson my daughter-in-law, Tiffany, was about to learn the hard way. It started on a Saturday in late October. The air was crisp and smelled like burning leaves, but inside the Golden Oak Country Club, it smelled like money and pretension. I walked up the marble steps, clutching a gift bag against my chest. Inside was a hand-carved wooden train set I had made myself in my workshop. I spent 3 weeks sanding every corner until it was smooth as silk, because my grandson Leo deserved something made with love, not just something bought with a credit card. I smoothed down the front of my dress. It was a simple navy blue cotton dress I bought at a department store 5 years ago. It was clean, it was pressed, it was respectable, but as soon as I reached the heavy glass doors, I saw her. Tiffany. She was standing by the entrance like a guard dog in sequins. Her dress was gold and tight, and probably cost more than my first car. She was laughing with a woman who was holding a glass of champagne, but the moment her eyes landed on me, the laughter died. It was like watching a light switch flip. Her smile vanished and was replaced by a look of pure disgust. She marched over to me, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. "Eleanor," she hissed under her breath, "what are you doing here?" I looked at her confused. "It is Leo's 5th birthday, Tiffany. I was invited." I held up the gift bag. "I simply wanted to see my grandson." She looked at the bag and then she looked at my shoes. They were comfortable walking shoes, sensible, not fashionable. "You cannot go inside looking like that," she said. Her voice was low, but it had a razor edge to it. "Look around you, Eleanor. This is the Golden Oak. The mayor is inside. My boss is inside. People who matter are inside. And you look like you just wandered in from a homeless shelter." I felt a hot flush of shame crawl up my neck. I looked past her into the ballroom. I saw the crystal chandeliers sparkling overhead. I saw servers moving through the crowd with silver trays. Everyone looked like they had been polished to a shine. Then I saw my son Robert. He was across the room talking to a man in a gray suit. "Robert," I called out. My voice was not loud, but it carried. He turned. He saw me, and for a second I saw him take a step forward. But then he saw Tiffany's face. He saw the anger in her eyes, and he stopped. He actually stopped. He looked down at his drink and pretended he had not heard me. That hurt more than anything Tiffany could have said. My own son, the boy I raised on my own after his father died, was too afraid of his wife to say hello to his mother. Tiffany stepped closer to me. "You are embarrassing us," she whispered. "Go home. Change into something decent or just do not come back." I straightened my back. "I am not leaving," I said quietly. "I am here to see Leo. I am his grandmother. I do not care about your mayor or your boss. I care about that little boy." Tiffany laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Oh, you really think you have a choice?" She turned her head and snapped her fingers at a large man standing by the door. He was wearing a security uniform that was too tight across the shoulders. "Excuse me," she said loudly. Her voice rang out across the entrance hall, causing several guests to turn and look. "This woman is bothering the guests. She is not on the list. Please escort her off the property immediately." The security guard looked at me. He looked at my gray hair and my simple dress and the little gift bag in my hands. He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am," he said to Tiffany, "are you sure? She looks harmless." Tiffany's eyes narrowed. "I am the one paying for this venue," she spat. "If I say she is trespassing, then she is trespassing. Get her out of here before she ruins the aesthetic." The aesthetic. She was worried I would ruin the look of her party. The guard sighed and turned to me. "I am sorry, ma'am," he said gently. "You have to go." I looked at Robert one last time. He was still staring at his drink. The cowardice was written all over his posture. He knew this was wrong. He knew I had driven 40 minutes to get here. He knew Leo would be asking for me, but he did nothing. I felt a cold calm settle over me. It was not sadness anymore, it was clarity. I looked Tiffany right in the eye. "You are making a mistake, Tiffany," I said. My voice was steady. "A very big mistake." She rolled her eyes. "The only mistake was inviting you in the first place," she said. "Now get out." The security guard put a hand on my elbow. He was gentle but firm. "Come on, ma'am," he said. "Let us not make a scene." I allowed him to guide me down the marble steps. I could feel the eyes of the guests burning into my back. I could hear their whispers. Who was that? Some beggar woman, probably. Can you believe she tried to crash the party? The heavy glass doors swung shut behind me, cutting off the music and the laughter. I stood alone on the sidewalk in the cool autumn air. The wind bit through my cotton dress. I looked down at the wooden train set in the bag. I would not get to see Leo's face when he opened it. I would not get to hug him or tell him I loved him. I walked to my car. It was a 10-year-old sedan parked next to a line of luxury SUVs and sports cars. I sat in the driver's seat and put the gift bag on the passenger seat. My hands were shaking, not from cold but from rage. Tiffany thought she had one. She thought she had taken out the trash. She thought I was just a poor old widow living on a fixed income. She had no idea. She had absolutely no idea who I really was. She saw the dress and the shoes and the old car and she assumed she knew my story. But she missed the most important chapter. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I had not used in 6 months. It rang twice before a woman answered. Her voice was crisp and professional. "Good evening, Mrs. Vance," she said. "We did not expect to hear from you on a Saturday. Is everything all right?" I looked back at the glowing windows of the Golden Oak Country Club. I could see the silhouettes of the people inside dancing and drinking. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Everything is fine, Susan," I said, "but I need you to prepare some paperwork for Monday morning. First, I need the deed to the Golden Oak Country Club transferred from the holding company to my personal portfolio. And second, I need you to acquire a controlling interest in Spark Marketing Solutions. That is Tiffany's company, isn't it?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Yes, ma'am, that is correct," the assistant said. "May I ask what the timeline is for the acquisition?" I watched a valet park a silver Porsche. "Immediately," I said. "I want to own the building she works in by the time she pours her morning coffee." And Susan, "Yes, Mrs. Vance, make sure the cleaning crew at her office is on standby. I have a feeling we are going to need a new uniform in a size small." I hung up the phone and started the engine. The old sedan sputtered to life. I was not going home to cry. I was going home to prepare. Tiffany wanted a show. She wanted to impress people with power and money. Well, I was about to give her the performance of a lifetime. I drove back to my little bungalow on Elm Street in silence. It is a small house with peeling white paint and a porch that leans a little to the left. To the neighbors, I am just the widow Vance who knits blankets and volunteers at the library. They see me tending my tomato plants in the summer and salting my sidewalk in the winter. They have no idea that the Vance on my mailbox stands for Vance Logistics, the company that moves 40% of the freight on the eastern seaboard. My husband Henry and I built that empire from one beat-up delivery truck and a lot of grit. When Henry passed away 10 years ago, everyone expected me to sell. They expected the grieving widow to take the cash and retire to Florida. Instead, I doubled our profits in 3 years, but I stayed in the bungalow. It was the house Henry and I bought when we had nothing, and it was the only place that felt like home. I walked into my kitchen and set the rejected gift bag on the table. The silence in the house was usually comforting, but tonight it felt heavy. I made myself a cup of tea Earl Grey hot. I sat down and opened my laptop. It is an old machine taped together at the hinge, but it connects to the encrypted server at headquarters just fine. I watched the progress bars on the screen as Susan worked her magic. Acquiring a mid-sized marketing firm like Spark was barely a blip on our radar. It was like a whale swallowing a minnow. The files started downloading: employee rosters, payroll data, lease agreements. I scrolled through them until I found what I was looking for. Tiffany Vance, Vice President of Brand Strategy. Salary $180,000 a year plus bonuses. I looked at her performance reviews. Aggressive. Results driven. Lacks team cohesion. Corporate speak for she is a bully but she makes us money. I took a sip of tea. It was bitter. I had forgotten the sugar. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Robert. Sorry about today, Mom. Tiff was just super stressed with the event planning. You know how she gets. Let's do lunch in a few weeks when things calm down. Love you. I stared at the screen. A few weeks. He was dismissing his mother's humiliation with a text message and a vague promise of lunch. He was optimizing his life to avoid conflict with his wife, just like he optimized his route to work to avoid traffic. I did not reply. I could not. If I typed what I was thinking, I would burn a bridge I might never be able to rebuild. Robert was weak, yes, but he was weak because he wanted peace. He just didn't realize that peace at the cost of your soul is not peace at all. It is surrender. I spent Sunday reviewing the footage. The Golden Oak Country Club had excellent security cameras, and since I had technically owned the building for about 6 hours, I had remote access. I watched the recording of the party. I saw Tiffany laughing with her friends. I saw her mocking the waiters when they didn't pour the champagne fast enough. I saw her snap her fingers at the cleaning lady who was trying to sweep up a broken glass. And then I saw the moment I arrived. I watched myself on the screen, a small gray-haired woman holding a gift bag. I saw the way Tiffany's posture changed, the predatory stillness. I saw Robert turn his back. Watching it a second time hurt less, but it made me angrier. It solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person Tiffany had ever looked down on. Sunday night came. I laid out my clothes for the next morning. Usually I would wear slacks and a cardigan, comfortable, invisible, but not tomorrow. I went to the back of my closet, past the wool coats and the rain slickers, to a garment bag I hadn't opened in years. I unzipped it. Inside was a charcoal gray Armani power suit. Sharp lines, Italian wool, tailored to perfection. I pulled out the silk blouse. I found the pearl necklace Henry had given me for our 40th anniversary. These were my armor. I hardly slept. I lay in bed listening to the wind rattle the loose window pane. I thought about the look on Tiffany's face when she told the guard to take me away. She thought she was the queen of the castle. She thought she was untouchable because she had a title and a corner office. She forgot that castles are built on land and land can be bought. She forgot that titles can be revoked. She forgot that the most dangerous person in the room is usually the one you didn't bother to say hello to. At 6 a.m. on Monday morning, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. I applied a layer of red lipstick. Not the soft pink I wore to church. Red, blood red. I brushed my hair back into a tight bun. I put on the suit. It still fit perfectly. I looked at the woman in the reflection. The grandmother was gone, the widow was gone, the CEO was back. I picked up my briefcase. I walked out to my car, but I didn't get into the Honda. A black town car was waiting at the curb. My driver James stepped out and opened the door. "Good morning, Mrs. Vance." He said, his face impassive. "Where to, downtown, James?" I said, sliding into the leather seat. "Spark Marketing Solutions. And don't park in the visitor lot." Park in the reserved space right in front of the door. Which reserved space, ma'am? The one that says CEO, I replied. It belongs to me now. As the car glided toward the city skyline, I watched the sun come up. It was going to be a beautiful day. For me anyway. For Tiffany, it was going to be the longest Monday of her life. The lobby of Spark Marketing Solutions was all chrome and glass, designed to intimidate anyone who walked in who didn't make six figures. It was exactly the kind of place Tiffany loved. I walked through the revolving doors at 8:55 am. The click of my heels on the polished terrazzo floor sounded like gunshots in the quiet morning air. The receptionist, a young girl with bright pink headphones around her neck, looked up startled. She started to say something, probably to ask if I had an appointment or a delivery, but the words died in her throat when she saw the look on my face. I didn't look like the grandmother who baked cookies. I looked like the woman who signed the checks. I walked past her desk without breaking stride. Mrs. Vance, she stammered, clearly having seen the memo that went out at 8 a.m., though she probably didn't connect the name to the face until just that second. The all-hands meeting is starting in conference room B. I know, I said, not turning my head. I called it. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. My heart wasn't racing. It was beating slow and steady. A war drum. When the doors opened, I saw the open plan office. It was a sea of nervous energy. People were whispering, clutching their coffee mugs, wondering who the new majority shareholder was and if their jobs were safe. Rumors fly fast in corporate America, faster than truth usually. I moved through the clusters of desks like a shark through a school of fish. The conversation died as I passed. I could feel their eyes on my suit, recognizing the quality, confused by the face. I looked familiar. To some of them, maybe from a company picnic years ago, but they couldn't place me. The glass walls of the main conference room were ahead. It was packed, standing room only. But right in the center, sitting in the chair usually reserved for the CEO, was Tiffany. She was holding court, animated, laughing. She was wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my car, and she looked entirely unbothered by the sudden corporate shakeup. I paused just outside the door, out of her direct line of sight, to listen. She was talking to a young man next to her, her voice carrying through the open door. It was honestly pathetic, Tiffany was saying, taking a sip of her latte. She showed up with this bag of literal garbage. I think it was some old wooden toy she found in her attic, and the smell, oh my God, it was like mothballs in desperation. I had to have security drag her out before the mayor arrived. Can you imagine if he had seen her? It would have tanked our brand. The young man chuckled nervously, trying to stay on her good side. Did she leave quietly? He asked. Oh, she tried to pull the I'm the grandma card. Tiffany laughed, flipping her hair. But I shut that down. You have to set boundaries with toxic people, you know, even if they are family, especially when they're family who don't know their place. That was it. That was the trigger. She wasn't just cruel, she was proud of it. She was using my humiliation as office cooler gossip to boost her own status. I pushed the heavy glass door open. It swung inward with a heavy whoosh. The room went silent instantly. Heads turned. Tiffany was mid-laugh, her head thrown back, but the sound cut off as if someone had severed her vocal cords. She stared at me. For a split second, I saw genuine confusion. She was trying to process the data. Eleanor, here, in a suit, in the boardroom, it didn't compute. Excuse me, Tiffany said, her voice recovering its usual icy haughtiness. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. Eleanor, what are you doing here? This is a closed meeting for employees only. How did you even get past security? She looked around the room, performing for her audience. I'm sorry, everyone, this is a family matter. My mother-in-law seems to be having a confused episode. She turned back to me, her smile tight and condescending. Eleanor, honey, this is an office. a place of business you need to leave now before I have to call security again. It was funny on Saturday, but now it's just sad. I didn't yell, I didn't scream. I simply walked to the head of the table. The current CEO, a man named Davis, who had been running the company into the ground, was standing in the corner looking pale. He knew who I was. He had signed the papers at midnight. Mr. Davis, I said, my voice calm and clear. Would you please explain to Mrs. Vance whose chair she is sitting in? Davis cleared his throat. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Tiffany, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Please get up. Tiffany looked at him shocked. Excuse me, Davis, she's trespassing. She's my husband's mother. She's nobody. She's the new owner, Davis whispered. The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen right out of the air. Tiffany froze. She looked at Davis, then back at me. Her face went from smug to pale white in the span of a heartbeat. That's impossible, she stammered. She lives in a shack. She drives a Honda. I drive a Honda because I like the gas mileage, I said, finally stepping up to the chair she was occupying. And I live in a shack because it has memories of my husband, but my bank accounts, they live in a very different neighborhood. I placed my briefcase on the table and clicked the latches open. The sound echoed in the silent room. Now, Tiffany, get out of my chair. She didn't move. She couldn't. Her legs seemed locked. She stared at me with wide, terrified eyes, her brain frantically trying to rewrite reality. I don't understand, she whispered. It's simple economics, I said, leaning in close so only she in the front row could hear the steel in my voice. You care about appearances. I care about assets. While you were buying dresses to impress strangers, I was buying the supply chain that delivers them. And yesterday, I bought this building, I bought this company, and I bought your debt. I pointed to the side of the room. Move. She scrambled out of the chair like it was on fire, stumbling slightly in her heels. She backed away until she hit the whiteboard, clutching her latte like a shield. I sat down. The leather was still warm from her body. I swiveled slowly to face the room. 50 shocked faces stared back at me. I clasped my hands on the table. Good morning, everyone, I said pleasantly. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am the CEO of Vance Logistics, and as of this morning, the owner of Spark Marketing. We are going to make some changes, but first we have a personnel matter to resolve. I turned my chair to face Tiffany, who was pressing herself against the wall, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Tiffany, step forward, please. Tiffany stepped forward, her face a mask of crumbling porcelain. She tried to smile, that practiced corporate smile she used when a client was unhappy, but her lips were trembling. Eleanor, she began, her voice pitching too high. I think we got off on the wrong foot. If I had known you were investing, obviously the security protocols would have been different. I was just trying to protect the company image. She looked around the room seeking allies. We all care about the brand image, don't we? No one nodded. No one made eye contact. They smelled blood in the water and they knew who the shark was. I opened the folder in front of me. This isn't about Saturday, Tiffany, I said, flipping a page. Although kicking your grandson's grandmother out of a birthday party does speak to your character, this is about liability. I pulled out a sheet of paper. 3 HR complaints in 6 months. One from an intern you called too poor to function because she wore the same suit twice. One from a caterer you yelled at until she cried. And one from your own assistant who quit because you threw a stapler at him. I looked up over my reading glasses. You are not a leader, Tiffany. You are a lawsuit waiting to happen. That is an exaggeration, Tiffany snapped, her defensive instincts kicking in. I have high standards. This team was soft before I got here. I pushed them to be better. You pushed them to quit, I corrected calmly. Turnover in your department is 40% higher than the company average. That costs money, and I hate wasting money. I closed the folder. So here is the situation. As the new owner, I cannot have a liability in a leadership position. Standard protocol would be to fire you immediately for cause, harassment, hostile work environment, gross misconduct. You would leave here with no severance, no reference, and a permanent mark on your record. That would make it very hard to find another job in this city. Tiffany gripped the edge of the table. You can't do that. Marcus, Robert, he won't let you. Robert isn't here, I said softly. And Robert doesn't sign your paycheck anymore. I do. I let the silence stretch. I let her feel the weight of it. However, I continued. I am a believer in second chances. I believe people can learn, can grow, so I am offering you an alternative. Hope flickered in her eyes. She straightened up. She thought I was bluffing. She thought I was going to move her to a different department, maybe bury her in administration. She could handle that. She could claw her way back from that. I'm listening, she said. You claim you understand this company, I said. But you only understand the top floor. To be a real leader, you need to understand the foundation. So option B is a transfer. A probationary period in a new role. You keep your salary for now, you keep your benefits. But you lose the title and you lose the office. Fine, Tiffany said quickly, too quickly. I'll take it. Whatever it is, I can handle it. I'm the best strategist you have. She looked around the room again, regaining a shred of her confidence. I'll turn whatever department you put me in into gold. You'll see. Excellent, I said. I picked up the phone on the conference table and dialed a 3-digit extension. Mr. Henderson. Yes, it's Eleanor. I have your new trainee. She accepted the position. Yes, please come collect her. I hung up. Mr. Henderson. Tiffany frowned. Is he in accounts? Legal. The back door of the conference room opened. A man in a blue jumpsuit walked in. He was holding a mop bucket in one hand and a stack of industrial paper towels in the other. It was Frank, the head of maintenance. He was a good man. He had been cleaning this building for 20 years, and Tiffany had never once learned his name. She had walked past him 1,000 times like he was furniture. Frank, I said, smiling warmly, this is Tiffany. She is joining your team starting immediately. She needs to learn the business from the ground up. Literally. Tiffany stared at Frank. Then she stared at the mop bucket. Then she looked at me, her mouth opening in a silent scream of horror. No, she whispered, you're joking. You want me to be a janitor. Sanitation and maintenance associate, I corrected. It is honest work, Tiffany. Frank is going to teach you how to polish the marble floors you like to walk on. He is going to teach you how to scrub the toilets in the executive washroom. You wanted to protect the company image. Now you can make sure it shines. I won't do it, she hissed, her face turning red. I will not scrub toilets. I have a master's degree. Then take option A, I said, reaching for the termination paperwork. I have the pen right here. Walk out that door unemployed and explain to your friends why you were fired for bullying. Or, I pointed to the bucket. Pick up the mop and prove you have some humility. The room was deadly silent. All eyes were on Tiffany. She looked at the door. She looked at me. I could see the gears turning in her head. If she quit, she lost the salary, the status, the lifestyle. She lost the narrative. If she stayed, she could play the victim. She could tell Robert the First was insane. She could try to sabotage me from the inside. She was arrogant enough to think she could survive this. She turned to Frank. She didn't look him in the eye. She looked at his shoulder. Give me the bucket, she snapped. Frank looked at me. I nodded. He held out the yellow bucket. Tiffany took it. It was heavy. Her arms sagged under the weight. The water sloshed over the side, splashing onto her cream-colored heels. She flinched. Wonderful, I said, standing up. Frank, take her to the supply closet and get her a uniform. That suit is too nice for unclogging drains. I turned to the rest of the room. Meeting adjourned, get back to work. As Frank let a stunned, fuming Tiffany out the back door, I sat back down in the leather chair. I watched them go. She thought this was just a game. She thought she could wait me out. She didn't realize that the basement was a very lonely place, and down there nobody cares how much your dress cost. You know, there is a saying that you never really know a building until you have seen its basement. The penthouse has the views, but the basement has the guts. The pipes, the wires, the trash. That is where the real truth lives. And that is exactly where Tiffany found herself 10 minutes after the board meeting. The supply closet was located on the sublevel next to the boiler room. It smelled of industrial lemon cleaner and stale mop water. I watched the security feed from my office upstairs as Tiffany stood there, holding the blue polyester uniform Frank had handed her. She held it with 2 fingers like it was radioactive. It's a medium, Frank said, his voice kind. Might be a little big in the shoulders, but you need the room to move. Scrubbing is active work. I am not wearing this, Tiffany said, her voice shaking. It's polyester. I'm allergic to synthetic fabrics. My skin needs to breathe. Frank chuckled. Trust me, lady, when you're elbow deep in the 3rd floor men's room, you're gonna want polyester. It repels fluids. Silk doesn't. She gagged, actually gagged. I took a sip of my coffee upstairs. Welcome to the real world, honey. She went behind a stack of boxes to change. When she came out, the transformation was complete. The gold dress was gone, hung carefully on a wire hanger. In its place was the shapeless blue jumpsuit. It swallowed her figure. The sanitation patch on the chest was slightly crooked. She had kept her heels on, though, a ridiculous sight. Blue workwear and 6-inch Louboutins. Shoes too, Frank said, pointing to a pair of black non-slip clogs on the floor. Safety regulations. Can't have you slipping on a wet floor and suing the company. Mrs. Vance was very specific about liability. Tiffany kicked off her heels with a snarl and jammed her feet into the clogs. She looked at herself in the small cracked mirror taped to the locker. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. The power, the glamour, the armor. It was all gone. All that was left was a terrified, angry girl in a janitor's suit. So she said, turning to Frank with a glare that could peel paint. Where is my office? I assume I have a desk to manage the schedules. Frank laughed. It was a deep belly laugh. Office, this is it. And there's no schedules to manage. I do the schedules, you do the work. He handed her a caddy filled with spray bottles, sponges, and a toilet brush. We start at the top and work our way down. Executive washrooms first. They like them sparkling before lunch. I could see the realization hit her. She wasn't managing the janitors, she was the janitor, and executive washrooms meant she had to go back up to the 4th floor. She had to clean up after the people she had been bossing around an hour ago. I can't go up there, she whispered. Everyone will see me. That's the job, Frank said, picking up his mop. And hey, don't worry. Most people don't even look at the cleaning staff. We're invisible. You taught him that, remember? That stung. I saw her flinch. She grabbed the caddy, her knuckles white. Fine, she hissed. Let's get this over with. I'll be back in my real office by next week once Eleanor realizes this little power trip is illegal. Sure thing, Frank said. But for now, grab the blue sponge. That's for the sinks. The red one is for the toilets. Don't mix them up. I did that once in '98, never lived it down. They took the service elevator up. I switched my camera view to the 4th floor hallway. The elevator doors opened and Tiffany stepped out. She kept her head down, hugging the cleaning caddy to her chest like a shield. She moved quickly toward the women's restroom, praying she wouldn't run into anyone. Fate, however, has a sense of humor. Just as she reached the door, it swung open. Sarah, the director of sales. A woman Tiffany had publicly berated last week for poor eyeliner application. Walked out. Sarah stopped. She looked at the blue uniform. She looked at the clogs. Then she looked up and saw Tiffany's face. The silence stretched for 5 seconds. Sarah's eyes went wide. She looked Tiffany up and down, taking in every inch of the fall from grace. Tiffany stopped breathing. She braced herself for a comment and insult something. But Sarah didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She simply smiled. A small pitying smile. And stepped around Tiffany like she was a traffic cone. She didn't speak. She didn't acknowledge her. She just kept walking, checking her phone. Tiffany stood there frozen. Being yelled at she could handle. Being fought with she enjoyed, but being ignored. Being treated as insignificant. That was a knife in the gut. She pushed into the bathroom, let the door swing shut, and I heard the sound of the lock clicking. Then over the audio feed I heard the sound of plastic bottles hitting the floor and a scream of pure frustrated rage. She was breaking down, but she wasn't quitting. Not yet. If you have never scrubbed a toilet that someone else just used, you do not know the definition of humility. And Tiffany? She was learning it the hard way. By noon her manicure was ruined. Her hair, usually sprayed into an immovable helmet of perfection, was escaping in damp wisps around her face. She smelled of bleach and sweat. I watched her from the doorway of the break room. She was sitting at a small wobbly table in the corner, staring at a vending machine sandwich like it was a personal insult. Her phone was on the table, buzzing relentlessly. Probably her friends from the country club asking why she wasn't answering their texts about the upcoming gala. She ignored them. Frank walked in, grabbing a soda. He sat down opposite her, not asking for permission. "You missed a spot in the third stall," he said, popping the tab. "Under the rim. Gotta get under the rim, Tiff. That's where the bacteria hides." Tiffany looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "Do not call me Tiff, and I am not doing it again. It's clean enough." "Clean enough ain't clean," Frank said, taking a long sip. "And if Mrs. Vance checks, and she will check, you're gonna be doing it again anyway. Might as well get it right the first time. That's a life lesson, by the way, free of charge." She glared at him, but she didn't argue. She was too tired. That is when the door opened and my son walked in. Robert looked lost. He was wearing his casual Friday polo on a Monday, which meant he was stressed. He was holding a bouquet of flowers, clearly intended as a peace offering for me. He scanned the room looking for the executive suite, but got turned around near the service elevators. "Excuse me," he said to the room at large. "I'm looking for Eleanor Vance's office. I think I took a wrong turn." He didn't recognize her. He looked right at the woman in the blue jumpsuit with the messy hair and the red face, and he didn't know it was his wife. Tiffany made a noise in her throat, a choked sob. "Robert," he froze. He turned back, slowly squinting. "Tiffany." His jaw actually dropped. The flowers dipped in his hand. "Oh my God, Tiff, what are you wearing? Why are you holding a toilet brush?" This was the moment, the crossroads. Tiffany could have told the truth. She could have said, "I was cruel to your mother and now I am paying the price." She could have owned it. But a scorpion is a scorpion, even when it's wearing polyester. She burst into tears, not real tears. I know the difference. But the performative racking sobs she used to get out of speeding tickets. She threw herself into his arms, getting bleach on his polo shirt. "Oh, Robert, thank God you're here," she wailed, burying her face in his neck. "It's your mother. She's lost her mind." Robert patted her back awkwardly, looking around to see if anyone was watching. "What do you mean? Mom is here. Is she okay?" Tiffany pulled back, grabbing his face with both hands. Her eyes were wide and frantic. "She's not okay, Robert. She's having a break, a mental break. She thinks she owns the company. She came in here this morning ranting about buying the building, screaming at everyone. She forced me into this costume. She said if I didn't scrub the floors she'd ruin us. She bought the company." Robert looked confused. "Mom doesn't have that kind of money. She lives on a pension." Exactly, Tiffany hissed, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. It's a delusion, Robert. A severe episode. She probably intimidated poor Davis into signing some fake papers. She's dangerous. She's running around the executive floor thinking she's a CEO. We have to stop her before she gets arrested or hurts herself. I stood in the shadows, my blood boiling. She wasn't just playing the victim. She was gaslighting my son into thinking I was senile. She was weaponizing his concern for me against me. Robert looked at his wife, then at the mop bucket, then at the ceiling. Mom has been acting weird lately, he muttered. Showing up at the party uninvited. The old clothes. Maybe you're right, maybe it's early onset dementia. It has to be, Tiffany insisted, wiping her eyes. Why else would she humiliate me like this? Why else would she want her daughter-in-law scrubbing toilets? It's not rational behavior, honey, it's sickness. She took a deep breath, composing herself. The predator was back. Listen to me, you need to go up there, you need to talk to her gently. See if you can get her to sign a paper. Maybe a temporary power of attorney, just so we can get her the help she needs, and fix this mess before I lose my job. Robert nodded slowly. Yeah, okay. I'll go talk to her. I'll get to the bottom of this. He gave her a squeeze and headed for the door, leaving the flowers on the table. He was walking into the lion's den armed with a lie his wife had just fed him. Tiffany watched him go. As soon as the door closed, her shoulders relaxed. The tears stopped instantly. She reached for her sandwich and took a bite, a cold, calculating look in her eyes. She thought she had found the loophole. She thought she could have me declared incompetent and take control of the assets I had just bought. I stepped out of the shadows. Tiffany jumped, nearly choking on her bread. Careful, I said, my voice dry as dust. You don't want to choke. You have a lot more toilets to clean. She stared at me, fear warring with defiance. You heard that, every word I said. You think you can turn my son against me. You think you can paint me as the crazy old woman. Tiffany stood up. She was shorter than me without her heels, but she puffed out her chest. He believes me, Eleanor. He always believes me. He knows I'm the smart one. By tonight you'll be in a home and I'll be back in my office, and this building will sell it. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Honey, you just declared war on a logistics expert. You want to see who can move faster, fine, but remember one thing, what she sneered. I raised him, I said. I know exactly how his brain works, and I know exactly what happens when he finds out he's been lied to. I turned and walked away, heading for the elevator to intercept my son. Tiffany had played her ace. Now it was time to show her the rest of the deck. My son Robert has always been a terrible liar. When he was 6, he broke a vase and tried to tell me a wind gust did it, even though the windows were closed. Now, standing in my office doorway, he wore that same guilty, panicked expression. He was holding the bouquet of wilted carnations like a shield, stepping into the room with the exaggerated caution one might use when approaching a bomb or a wild animal. Mom, he said softly. He used that voice. The high, gentle tone people use for toddlers and the very elderly. Mom, it's me, it's Robert. Do you know where you are right now? I didn't look up from the spreadsheet I was auditing. I am in the corner office of Spark Marketing, on the 4th floor, zip code 10018. And you are standing on my Persian rug with muddy shoes. Wipe them, please. Robert blinked, clearly thrown off by my sharpness. Tiffany had prepped him for a confused, rambling old woman. Instead, he got a CEO. He wiped his feet automatically but kept coming closer, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for the invisible demons Tiffany claimed were chasing me. Mom, listen, he said, pulling a chair close to the desk. He sat on the edge of it, leaning in. Tiffany is really worried about you. She says you've been confused, buying things you can't afford, acting aggressively. She thinks, and I agree. That maybe the stress of Dad being gone is finally catching up to you. I took off my reading glasses and set them down with a click. Your father has been gone for 10 years, Robert. My grief is processed. My bank account, however, is very active. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. I recognized the legal header upside down. A power of attorney form. Tiffany moved fast. She must have had this drafted and ready in her car, just waiting for a moment of weakness. I just want to help, he pleaded, pushing the paper toward me. If you sign this, I can take over the financial mess. I can talk to the lawyers, get this purchase annulled before you lose the house. We can get you into that nice assisted living facility near our house, the one with the garden, the one Tiffany calls God's waiting room. I asked. Robert flinched. She never said that. She said it last Thanksgiving, I corrected. While she was pouring her third glass of wine, I picked up the power of attorney form. It gave Robert full control over my assets, which meant by extension it gave Tiffany control. She would sell the company, liquidate my savings, and stick me in a home where the only thing I'd manage was a bingo card. Robert the First said, my voice dropping the sarcasm. Look at me, really look at me. Do I look confused? Do I look like I'm having an episode? He studied my face. He saw the clear eyes, the steady hands, the iron-pressed suit. He hesitated. No. But Tiff said you were screaming. She said you forced her into a janitor's uniform. I gave her a choice, I said. She could be fired for harassment and ageism, or she could learn humility. She chose the uniform. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a thick file folder. I slid it across the desk right on top of his power of attorney form. And as for the money, read this. He opened the folder. Inside were the bank transfer confirmations from the Cayman Islands holding company I used for acquisitions, the wire transfer numbers, the deed to the building, the email from the previous owner thanking me for the generous and swift transaction. Robert read the numbers, his eyes widened. 3 million cash. He looked up, his mouth hanging open. Mom, where did you get $3 million? I didn't get it, Robert, I earned it. Vance Logistics grossed $40 million last year. Vance Logistics, I thought that was just a little trucking thing Dad started, like 2 trucks. It was, I said, until I took over. Now it's a fleet of 200. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to build your own life. I wanted you to work for your success, not wait for me to die so you could inherit mine. He sat back, the air going out of him. The dementia narrative was crumbling. You can hallucinate voices, but you cannot hallucinate a certified bank draft. So, you're rich, I am comfortable, I said, and I am competent, which means Tiffany lied to you again. Robert rubbed his temples. I don't understand. If you're really the boss, why humiliate her? She's my wife because she humiliated me, I said, and not just me. She treats people like dirt, Robert, and she dragged you into it. She called security on your mother because my dress wasn't expensive enough. Is that the woman you want raising your son? He looked down at the flowers. He was wavering. The truth was right there staring him in the face, but breaking free from a manipulator like Tiffany is like trying to untangle yourself from barbed wire. The more you pull, the more it hurts. She's under a lot of pressure, he mumbled, repeating the script she programmed into him. She's just ambitious. Just then my computer monitor flickered. A red alert box popped up on the bottom of the screen. Security alert, unauthorized access attempt, server room B. I frowned. Server room B housed the physical backups, the hard drives, the evidence. I clicked the alert. A grainy black and white video feed popped up. There in the dim light of the server room was a figure in a blue janitor's jumpsuit, but she wasn't mopping. She was kneeling behind the main rack, trying to jam a USB drive into the console. Ambitious is one word for it, I said, turning the monitor so Robert could see. Criminal is another. Robert squinted at the screen. Is that Is that Tiffany? She's trying to upload a virus, I said, my voice cold, or delete the personnel files. She thinks if she destroys the records of her HR complaints, I won't have cause to fire her. She's trying to burn the building down to save her own skin. I stood up. Come on, Robert. It's time for a field trip. Where are we going? He asked, standing up too, looking terrified. To the basement, I said. I think it's time you saw exactly how confused your mother really is. The elevator ride down to the sub-basement was the longest 30 seconds of my life. Robert stood next to me, staring at the floor numbers as they ticked down. He was vibrating with anxiety, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. He wanted to believe his wife. He desperately wanted there to be a logical explanation. That she was dusting the servers, that she was lost, that she was doing anything other than committing a felony. But deep down he knew. I could see the heartbreak starting to crack his face like a windshield hit by a stone. When the doors opened, the cold air of the server farm hit us. It hummed with the sound of 1,000 cooling fans, a white noise that swallowed footsteps. We walked down the corridor, the motion sensor lights flicking on ahead of us. We turned the corner into server room B. The door was propped open with a rubber wedge. A violation of protocol that Tiffany had undoubtedly learned from stealing Frank's keys. She was there, hunched over the main console, the blue glow of the monitor illuminating her face. She was typing furiously, her eyes darting back and forth. The USB drive stuck out of the port like a dagger. She was so focused on her destruction that she didn't hear us approach over the drone of the fans. Format complete, she muttered to herself, a terrifying little smile playing on her lips. Goodbye evidence. What exactly are you deleting, Tiffany? Robert asked. His voice was quiet, but in that acoustic dead zone it sounded like a shout. Tiffany spun around, knocking a stack of backup tapes to the floor. She gasped, backing up against the server rack. When she saw Robert, her face went through a rapid series of contortions. Shock, fear, calculation, and finally a desperate manic innocence. Robert, she squeaked, hiding her hands behind her back. Thank God you're here. I came down to check on the system. I heard a noise and look. She pointed a trembling finger at the screen. Someone tried to wipe the HR database. I was just trying to stop it. Stop it. I walked past her and tapped the keyboard. The command history scrolled up the screen. Run erase. Override admin. Target personnel files 2020 to 2025. You weren't stopping it, Tiffany. You initiated it. No, she lunged toward Robert, grabbing his arm. She's lying. She did this. She came down here earlier in her confused state and pressed buttons. I was trying to fix it to save the company. Robert, you have to believe me. She's trying to frame me. Robert looked at her, really looked at her. He looked at the blue janitor's jumpsuit she was still wearing. He looked at the sweat on her forehead. He looked at the pure, unfiltered panic in her eyes. And for the first time in his marriage, he didn't blink. Mom has been with me in her office for the last 20 minutes, Robert said, his voice flat. We watched you on the security feed, Tiffany. We watched you break the lock. We watched you plug in that drive. We watched you type erase. Tiffany froze. Her grip on his arm loosened. The concerned wife mask slipped and something uglier, something sharper peered out from underneath. You were watching. Why? Robert asked, tears finally spilling over. Why would you do this? Why would you try to destroy my mother's company? Because she's trying to ruin me, Tiffany screamed, the sound echoing off the metal racks. She made me scrub toilets, Robert. Me, I am a vice president. I am the face of this brand. And she humiliated me in front of the whole staff. She deserves to lose everything. If I delete those files, she can't fire me for cause. She can't touch me. You just committed corporate espionage, I said calmly. That is a felony, Tiffany. I don't need HR files to fire you now. I can have you arrested. Tiffany laughed. It was a jagged, broken sound. Go ahead, call the police. Arrest the mother of your grandson. See how that plays out in family court, Robert. You think a judge will give custody to a man whose mother threw his wife in jail? She turned her venom on me. You want to play hardball, Grandma? Fine. If you call the cops, you will never see Leo again. I will take him so far away you'll need a telescope to find him. I will tell him his grandmother is a monster who put his mommy in prison. Robert stepped back horrified. You're using our son as a bargaining chip. I am doing what I have to do to survive, she hissed. This is war, Robert. Whose side are you on, your wife's or this? This bitter old woman's. I stepped forward. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. You mistake my patience for weakness, Tiffany. You think because I knit sweaters and bake cookies that I am soft, but you forget how I built this company. I dealt with union strikes, hostile takeovers, and recession before you were born. I do not negotiate with terrorists, and I certainly do not negotiate with family members who threaten my grandson. I pulled the USB drive out of the console. The system backs up to a remote cloud server every 10 minutes. You deleted the local copy, yes, but the cloud copy is safe. You destroyed nothing but your own career. Tiffany's face went white. The leverage was gone. The sabotage had failed. Go home, I said. Get out of my building. The board meeting is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Be there. We will finalize your employment status then. I'm not coming, she stammered, backing toward the door. If you don't show up, I said, I hand this security footage to the district attorney. If you do show up and sign the papers I present to you, I might let you stay out of handcuffs for Leo's sake, not yours. She looked at Robert one last time, waiting for him to defend her, waiting for him to fix it. Robert turned his back on her and looked at the blinking server lights. Go home, Tiffany, he whispered. She fled. We heard her clogs clattering down the hallway, then the ding of the elevator. Silence returned to the server room, heavy and cold. I'm sorry, Mom, Robert said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I really didn't know. I know you didn't, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. But now you do. The question is, what are you going to do about it tomorrow? Robert wiped his face. He stood up straighter. The boy was gone. The man was finally waking up. I'm going to be at that meeting, he said, and I'm going to bring a lawyer, not for her, for me. I nodded. The sabotage had failed, but the war wasn't over. Tomorrow was the final battle, and I had one last lesson to teach Tiffany about the price of arrogance. They say the truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable. Tuesday morning in the boardroom felt less like a business meeting and more like a funeral for a lifestyle. The air was so still you could hear the hum of the HVAC system. I sat at the head of the table, flanked by our general counsel, Mr. Henderson, and the head of human resources. But the most important person in the room sat to my right, my son Robert. He looked tired. He hadn't slept, I knew that, but the nervous shifting energy from yesterday was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. He was wearing a dark suit, his hands clasped on top of a manila envelope. He didn't look like a boy afraid of his wife anymore. He looked like a father ready to protect his son. At 9:05 a.m. the door opened. Tiffany walked in. She had clearly spent the morning trying to reconstruct her armor. She was wearing a sharp black blazer, her hair was sprayed into submission, and she had applied enough makeup to hide the dark circles of a sleepless night. She walked in with her chin up, scanning the room, assessing threats. When she saw Robert, her eyes lit up. She mistook his presence for support. Robert, she breathed, ignoring me and the lawyers completely. She rushed toward him, a look of relieved martyrdom on her face. Thank God you're here. We need to shut this down. Your mother is taking this too far. I spoke to a lawyer this morning and he said this is clear workplace harassment. If we present a united front, we can. Sit down, Tiffany, Robert said. He didn't stand up to greet her. He didn't offer a hand. His voice was flat, devoid of warmth. Tiffany froze mid-step. The rejection hit her like a physical slap. She looked at him confused, then looked at me, then back at him. She slowly pulled out the chair at the opposite end of the table, the furthest seat from us, and sat down. She clutched her purse in her lap. "Okay," she said, her voice tight. "So that's how it is, fine. Let's get this over with. I assume this meeting is to discuss my reinstatement. I am willing to overlook the janitorial incident if my title is restored immediately." I almost admired her audacity. Almost. I nodded to the lawyer. Mr. Henderson opened a thick file. "Mrs. Vance," he began, "this meeting is to address the termination of your employment with Spark Marketing and Vance Logistics, effective immediately." Tiffany let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. "Termination? You can't fire me. I am a vice president. I have a contract. And I have grounds to sue you for everything you're worth. You have no cause." "Actually," I said, leaning forward, "we have cause. We have so much 'cause we had to buy a bigger filing cabinet." I pressed a button on the remote. The large screen behind me flickered to life. The video from the server room played. Grainy black and white but crystal clear. We watched Tiffany break the lock. We watched her insert the drive. We watched her face, twisted with malice, as she initiated the deletion. The room watched in silence. On the screen, the Tiffany in the video screamed, "I will take him so far away you'll need a telescope to find him." In the boardroom, the real Tiffany went pale. She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing. The evidence was irrefutable. It wasn't just incompetence or attitude. It was a crime. "Attempted destruction of corporate property," Mr. Henderson listed, reading from a sheet. "Unauthorized access to secure servers, attempted blackmail, and based on the audit we ran overnight, misuse of company funds. Apparently the client dinners you expensed last month were actually spa treatments for you and your friends from the club." Tiffany slammed her hand on the table. "This is entrapment. You set me up. Robert, tell them. Tell them this is a setup." She looked at her husband, desperate for him to jump in, to make excuses, to be the shield he had always been. Robert finally looked at her. His eyes were red but dry. "I can't do that, Tiff. I saw you. I heard you threaten to take Leo. You looked me in the eye and said you'd keep my son from me. I was angry," she shrieked. "I didn't mean it. I was protecting us." "No," Robert said quietly. "You were protecting yourself. You always are." He picked up the manila envelope in front of him. He stood up and walked down the length of the long mahogany table. Tiffany watched him come, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Maybe he was bringing her a defense strategy, maybe a settlement offer. He stopped in front of her. He slid the envelope across the polished wood. It wasn't from the company lawyers. It was from a family practice firm. "What is this?" she whispered, her hands trembling as she touched the paper. "Divorce papers," Robert said, "and a restraining order. You aren't going to take Leo anywhere, Tiffany. I'm filing for full custody, based on your behavior. The threats, the instability, the criminal charges pending. My lawyer says I have a very strong case." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a person. Tiffany stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. The career she could lose, the money she could lose, but the status. Being a divorced, unemployed woman facing criminal charges. That was a death sentence in her world. "You can't," she whimpered, looking up at him, tears finally spilling over. Real tears this time. Tears of total defeat. "Robert, please, I love you. We can fix this. I'll, I'll go to therapy. I'll apologize to your mother. Please don't do this. I loved you too," Robert said, his voice cracking. "I loved the woman I thought you were. But that woman doesn't exist. She's just a costume you wear." He turned his back on her and walked back to his seat. I stood up. "Mr. Henderson has the termination paperwork. Sign it and we might agree not to press criminal charges for the data breach." Refuse and the police are waiting in the lobby. I pointed to the door. But either way, you are leaving this building, now. Tiffany looked at the pen in front of her. She looked at Robert, who was staring out the window, refusing to meet her gaze. She realized then that the performance was over. There was no audience left to impress. She picked up the pen. Her hand shook so badly the signature looked like a seismograph reading of an earthquake, but she signed. She pushed the papers across the table. I hope you are happy, she whispered to me. You destroyed a family over a dress. No, Tiffany, I said quietly, collecting the papers. I saved a family from a bully. And as for the dress, it was just cotton. The problem was never the fabric. It was the person looking at it. I pressed the intercom button. Frank, can you come to the boardroom, please? We have an escort situation. The door opened and Frank walked in wearing his blue jumpsuit. He looked at Tiffany and then at me. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just held the door open. Ready to go, ma'am? Frank asked. Tiffany stood up. She smoothed her blazer one last time, trying to summon the ghost of the woman who walked in here an hour ago. She looked at Robert. I will call you, she said. Call my lawyer, Robert replied without turning around. She walked to the door. As she passed me, I saw the cracks in the porcelain. She looked old, not in years but in spirit. She looked like someone who had just realized she was the villain in her own story. Frank, I said just as she reached the threshold, please escort this woman off the property. She is disturbing the work environment. Tiffany flinched. It was the exact same sentence she had used on me at the country club. The circle was complete. She walked out and the heavy door clicked shut behind her. The silence in the room was deep and clean. It felt like a fever had finally broken. Robert let out a long breath and sank into his chair. He put his head in his hands. It is going to be hard, he said, explaining this to Leo. It will be hard, I agreed, moving to sit next to him. But it is better to explain why someone left than to explain why they are staying and making everyone miserable. We will get through it. We are Van Cess. We are built for heavy lifting. 6 months later, the snow was melting in the city. I sat on a park bench watching a 5-year-old boy in a bright red coat chase a pigeon. Leo was laughing, that pure, unburdened laugh that only children have. Robert sat next to me holding 2 coffees. He looked different. He had lost 10 pounds and the perpetual crease of worry between his eyebrows was gone. He was working at the company now, learning the logistics division. He started at the bottom in dispatch and he loved it. He looks happy, Robert said, watching his son. He is happy, I said. He spent the weekend with me building a birdhouse. He is good with his hands, just like his grandfather. I saw her yesterday, Robert said quietly. I didn't have to ask who. Oh, she is working at that high-end boutique on 5th Avenue, he said, taking a sip of coffee. I walked past the window. She was on her knees helping a woman try on shoes. The customer was yelling at her about the fit. Screaming, actually. And Tiffany. She just sat there and took it. She kept saying, I am sorry, ma'am, right away, ma'am. Humility is a difficult teacher, I said, but she is learning. Do you think she will ever change, he asked. Maybe, I said. But that is not our story anymore, Robert. Our story is right there. I pointed at Leo, who had given up on the pigeon and was running toward us, his arms wide open. Grandma, he yelled, crashing into my legs. Grandma, did you bring the cookies? I pulled a Tupperware container out of my bag. Oatmeal raisin, I said, just the way you like them. He grabbed a cookie and sat between us, crumbling crumbs all over my coat. I didn't care. I looked at my son and my grandson. We were not perfect, we had scars, but we were whole. I thought about the woman I was 6 months ago, standing outside a country club holding a wooden train, feeling small and poor. Tiffany had tried to make me feel worthless because she didn't understand that value has nothing to do with price tags. She thought power was a corner office and a title. She didn't know that real power is the ability to protect the people you love. I wrapped my arm around Leo and pulled him close. The wind was cold, but I was warm. Grandma, Leo asked, looking up with big brown eyes. Are you rich? Robert laughed, almost choking on his coffee. I smiled and wiped a crumb off Leo's cheek. Yes, sweetheart, I said. I am the richest woman in the world. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't talking about money. So tell me, friends, what would you have done? Would you have given Tiffany a second chance, or did she get exactly what she deserved? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of justice, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I have left 2 more shocking family stories on the screen for you right now. Click on one and I will see you there.